Welcome back to App Stories. My name is John Voorhees, and I am joined by Federico Viticci. Hey, Federico.
Hello, John. How are you?
I'm doing great. If this is a low-energy version of App Stories, it's because Federico and I think we're a little fried at the moment, having both published our annual OS reviews and coordinated the publication of 2 other reviews with Jonathan and Devin, and doing things for the club. And it's just a lot all at once, especially since Apple decided to drop it all on a Monday. And we spread things out, which was good, because I don't think we could have been ready for Monday, but I appreciated having the extra days to work on things like the ebooks, which is always like a weird time sink for me, but it's a finicky script that we use and gives me headaches once in a while, but it always turns out nice. So I'm glad we're able to do that.
Yeah, it's been a week, right? It's been a very
It really has.
But we're super happy.
Yeah, we are
with the response. Thank you to every MacStories reader, every old and new club member. People came back to the club after trying it a few years ago. We were obviously so grateful that you decided to join again, and I think it's been one of the best weeks ever on the site in terms of comments and obviously like just traffic and just the general response. And I'm happy that we were able to sort of have all of the major reviews on MacStories in the same week. It's quite an accomplishment for a small operation like ours. And so, yeah, I'm happy, but also like, obviously I'm tired and you're tired, but we got to do a show and we got to talk about Sequoia. And you, in this case, are the man of the hour, so to speak, John.
I am. You know what we should do, Federico, before we start with Sequoia, though? I think we should just recap very briefly what we're doing for club members, in case there's anybody out there who has yet to hear our pitch. But, you know, it is important to us that people join the club, because it is an important way that we continue to operate at MacStories and are able to do things like hire an artist to do the illustrations for your review and do a bunch of other things and work with a bunch of other people. And so this year, if you join the regular Club MacStories, you get Federico's ebook, the version of the ebook. Plus, of course, we're doing a special edition of MacStories Weekly on Saturday, where Federico is going to do his making of, which has become a tradition where he kind of goes through the workflows and backstory about how the review came together this year. We'll also have some other review-themed sections of that issue as well, because I'm going to be doing some tips and tricks for macOS Sequoia. And if you join Club MacStories Plus or Club Premier, you get the other ebooks, which are an ebook based on my review, Jonathan's watchOS 11 review, and Devin's Vision OS 2.0 review, plus the wallpapers of Scout Wilkinson's illustrations that were in Federico's review, as well as a screensaver that James Thompson made for us that brings Scout's art to life, because she did her artwork in Procreate, which creates a live time-lapse recording of the development of the art. And so you actually can see, when the screensaver kicks in, you can see Scout from the moment she starts the project to the final product. And I love those videos. They're really cool. There's 6 different ones that can be put in as your screensaver, or they can be just kind of chosen randomly by the system. So I think that's about it. So if you're interested in joining and supporting what we do and getting all those great perks, just go to plus.club. We also have, App Stories Plus, which is a separate subscription if you want, but it also comes as part of Club Premier, along with the other things that we do all year long, like discounts, extra columns, and other things for club members.
Yeah.
All right, Federico, where would you like to start with macOS Sequoia?
I want you to tell me how you've been using iPhone mirroring.
All right. So iPhone mirroring, this is my sleeper thing for this review. I thought this is a neat trick, but it struck me initially as this is like a party trick. It's like someone says, hand me a deck of cards and does a party trick for you with a deck of cards. It's actually very useful because, first of all, there are apps that I think probably everyone uses that exist solely in iPhone form. And what I mean by that is, yes, my bank app is on my iPhone, and it's on my iPad. And I can also get to it on the web. But there are things that I can't do even on the web, like control my garage door or set the temperature on my thermostats in my home. There are things like that that are only on my phone that iPhone mirroring is great to use with, because you can, whether your phone is in standby or in your pocket or whatever, you can mirror it onto your Mac and interact with it just like you would if you pulled it out. But the advantage is that you don't have to pull it out, and it's like a small thing, but I found it's easier just to kind of do a really quick spotlight search in iPhone mirroring, get to the app I need, do what I need to do, and get back to what I was working on in context on the Mac with my hands on the keyboard without going and grabbing my phone, which now needs to be unlocked, or digging it out of a bag or wherever it happens to be, and interrupting what I was doing. I find it's less disruptive of my workflow, basically. And there's an added advantage, particularly with what we do, which is when I'm reviewing an iPhone app, I now can use the app that I'm reviewing on my Mac, even though it's playing on my iPhone, while I write on my Mac. And that's really powerful for me as someone who likes to write on the Mac with a big screen and have all those resources available to me there, that I don't have to be switching back and forth. And on top of that, the other thing that I've done a lot, which is, Apple says this is the one feature of mirroring that's not there yet, which is you'll be able to drag and drop files between your Mac and your iPhone. That hasn't been implemented yet. It's coming later this year. Probably, it's not in the beta of 18.1 yet, so maybe it's an 18.2 thing. But I've been using instead AirDrop. And for a lot of the beta period, the AirDrop only worked one direction. But now it works both directions, and it's surprisingly useful to be able to take screenshots when I may be away from my desk, and then come back to my office, get on my Mac, mirror, and then just AirDrop all those photos onto the Mac to do something with them there, whether I'm editing them in Pixelmator Pro or uploading them with our web app, whatever it happens to be. It's just easy to be able to go back and forth. And I guess the third thing is, because I do a lot of our social media stuff for MacStories, it's really easy for me to use something like Instagram by mirroring. And I can grab a video or an image, whatever it happens to be, post it to the MacStories Instagram account without having to grab my phone and do it there. And that means if the assets that I'm using that I want to post, I've been creating on my Mac, I don't have to then first AirDrop them. I do end up AirDropping the phone usually to then post them to Instagram, but I can kind of do it all in a self-contained way, which is really nice.
That's cool. So this is something you're basically using every day now, right? You just always, how's the process of starting? Do you just start from the dock in Sequoia and it just connects?
Yep, it just connects, because what you do is it's a separate app. It sits in your dock. It gets installed in your dock automatically. You can take it out of the dock and then just open it like any other app if you want, whether you're using a launcher or the Finder or whatever. And then you click on Connect, and you see this animation where it says connecting to iPhone 15 Pro Max, and it kind of fills up it's grayed out words, and then it fills up with white text as it connects, and then it connects. And I just did it as we were talking, and I've got podcasts open. So,
nice.
There are keyboard shortcuts for going to the home screen, going to the app switcher, and doing spotlight search, all of which really appreciate having those, because it makes it easier just to kind of drive the whole process from your keyboard. And it's not a resizable window or anything. It's just a static size window. But if you have if you're working on, say, like I do, a studio display in the default resolution, it's plenty big. I think at some resolutions, it might start looking a little small, because I have heard some people complain that it's a little small, but I think that's more if you're using really, really dense resolutions and that kind of thing.
Very nice. Yeah, I tried, and obviously I forgot that iPhone mirroring is not available in Europe.
Oh, right.
So I get an error saying it's not available in your country or region. But yeah, so it'll come eventually, I suppose.
So
Uh,
I've wondered about that and whether it's a DMA thing. I do think that, and this is like a little bit of a DMA tangent, I guess, but I do think that Apple has gotten very gun shy in the EU
mhm.
about new features. And, I've mentioned this before, like in our Discord, and I think people don't understand why the iPhone mirroring would be a DMA thing because the Mac is not subject to the DMA. But I think the argument would be if I were the European Commission, it would be, well, the iPhone is the gatekeeper. And by making the iPhone available on the Mac, you are essentially giving the Mac an unfair advantage compared to a PC because you can't do the same thing on a PC.
I suppose, yeah.
I'm not going to comment on whether that's a good argument or not, but I think that there is an argument there, and that may be exactly what's going on. So
Yeah.
I think it'll come eventually. It's this whole EU thing is a process with the DMA, and I think it'll all get worked out in the end myself
Yeah.
personally. So we shall see. But the other thing, I guess the other aspect of iPhone mirroring, Federico, worth mentioning is that you can get your iPhone notifications on your Mac. And you don't have to be in mirroring mode with your phone in order to get those. They just come in. And if you're someone who just lets all notifications through, that could be a little overwhelming. I manage them pretty tightly, so I do actually appreciate having those notifications there. I don't use them a ton just because I've never used Mac notifications a lot because they're behind the time, and the notification center just isn't very good on the Mac. And as a result, I still kind of fall back to my phone, but it is nice to be able to peek at them once in a while, see whether there's something important there that just doesn't come through to my Mac for whatever reason. And then you can interact with them if they have the option to interact with them. You can do that there and be done with it. And that way, I mean, it's one of those things where like, if there are notifications you have to deal with, now having dealt with them on your Mac, when you leave your desk for the day and you look at your iPhone, you're not going to have a bunch of new messages or notifications you have to deal with. You'll have actually dealt with them all in one place.
Very nice. The other feature in your review is what's it called? The window snapping.
Yeah, it's just window tiling.
Window tiling. Do you like it? Do you use it?
I use it, but I still use Raycast's window management more. Raycast actually has that built into their launcher app, and they've got a lot more options. And what I tend to do, I know that people who use Moom and Rectangle and Lasso and all these other third-party apps, there's a lot of options, and you can really come up with elaborate presets and all this. I don't really do that. I do like a couple of different things. I either have two apps open side by side, filling half of the screen each.
Okay.
Or I have one app open that fills the screen, not full screen mode, but fills the screen. And occasionally I'll do like a 2/3 in the middle thing, which is kind of better for Safari because, you make Safari super wide and all you're doing is creating big white margins on the side anyway. So that's typically what I do. And that works. That's actually pretty good with what Apple has because Apple's is quite simple too. They have two different categories. One's called move and resize, where you can move a window and resize it to fill the left side, the right side, the top, or the bottom of your screen. And then they have one called fill and arrange. And fill and arrange either takes that one window, the active window, to the full size of the screen, or it takes that window and the last one you used and puts them on the left and the right, or it does one on the left, two on the right, the two on the right being like kind of split top and bottom, or it does 4 in quadrants on the screen. So there are a total of 8 options. I use the left and right ones and the full screen one, but if my hands are on the keyboard, I'm just as likely to resort to Raycast. And one thing I discovered today that's worth noting is that there are keyboard shortcuts for all of these different arrangements, right? But they depend on the globe key. And the globe key cannot be programmed with AppleScript or a Stream Deck or anything like that. That key is proprietary and nobody has access to it but Apple, which is a real shame because I was going to set up some buttons on my loop deck with the ones that I use most commonly, and I couldn't do it, not with Apple's. I ended up falling back to what Raycast has because they don't depend on that. You can set up your own keyboard shortcuts for Raycast.
I want to talk about the sort of the central theme of your review.
Yeah.
Which is that Sequoia, compared to previous macOS releases, it feels unfinished and it feels like it's not necessarily showing a path for the future like previous releases that had Swift UI or Mac Catalyst did. And I was kind of wondering, like, what you think, having used Sequoia, for several months, if you think that part of that narrative is because of the absence of Apple Intelligence, or if you think there's something deeper in this release that makes it just a little bit more, I don't know, maybe anonymous compared to previous ones. I was kind of wondering how you feel about that.
Yeah, this was a really hard review to write in some respects because I had this nagging feeling of like vaguely disappointed with Sequoia. And I had a hard time putting my finger on it for a long time because it's not that there aren't some good features in here. I really do like mirroring and the window tiling and, things like the video viewer in Safari, but it doesn't go much deeper than that. I mean, there are other features but there aren't that many more big features other than some system app updates. And the thing about it is that it feels like part of this update was ripped out of it at the last second. This is, pure speculation, but it feels like they got halfway done with the release. They pulled all the people off of the release to work on Apple Intelligence, and they just finished up what they had started on Sequoia and moved everything to Apple Intelligence. And Apple Intelligence is still coming, and it may be that once we get to 18 or 15.3 or 4, that it feels like a complete update to the operating system. But right now it doesn't. And the difference is that in past years, even when we had things like the Catalyst sneak peek, we got a piece of that right at the very get-go with some system apps that implemented it. If you remember, like those Catalyst system apps were not very good when they were first released, but at least we got a sneak peek and a feel for where things were going. And it was a story that had some substance behind it. And it's not that Apple Intelligence is entirely substance-free because obviously we have a developer preview now. So we can look at that and we can make a judgment about whether that's good or not. But it feels like this is an update where Apple, instead of taking its time and coming out and implementing a technology when it was good and ready and could do it the right way, that they're chasing artificial intelligence in a way that is market-driven that we've never really seen Apple do before. And it feels different, and it feels a little chaotic and a little unplanned and not as polished as in the past.
And let me ask you this before we wrap up, because this is the sort of conversation that we have every year. When you look ahead at next year, and you think about how you work on your Mac, what is it that, you look at your Mac, you look at macOS, what is it that makes you think, man, I wish macOS could do this, and it doesn't?
There's a few things. I mean, I think one of them is I feel like there are a lot of system apps that have been neglected. I think shortcuts is an incredibly big disappointment on the Mac. And, there's not a lot there wasn't a lot added to iOS either, for that matter, this year, but there's been very little introduced on the Mac for shortcuts since its debut. And if you remember, Craig Federici did say this was the future of automation on the Mac. And maybe by that, he meant that there was no future for automation on the Mac, I suppose. That's a possibility. But I don't think that's what they meant. I think they meant that this is how we were going to go forward. And it was going to be, take over for things like Automator and perhaps even AppleScript. But that really hasn't materialized. I think things like music is still too buggy compared to other systems and hasn't had even the more minor design refreshes that we've seen on other platforms. I think that home is a little bit in the same boat where it doesn't always work nearly as smoothly as it does on the iPhone or the iPad. And the one thing I would like to see more of, besides just that attention to the rough edges that seem like they have never really truly get fixed, is I'd like to see more things like iPhone mirroring. I do think that, putting aside whether that gets Apple in hot water with the EU, assuming that they can work that out in some way, I do think there is a big benefit to having more integration with all these devices that we use. Because yes, the Mac should be able to stand on its own, and it always has, so I'm not really concerned about that. But I think that the Mac has the flexibility to do things to both take the iPhone and the iPad to another level, but also benefit from the things that those platforms can do that aren't on the Mac today. So I think that's why iPhone mirroring is there, is because, part of it, I suppose, is the practical aspect of things where not everything that is an iPhone app becomes a Mac app, and it probably never will be. And if there's not also a web component, you don't even have the web apps to fall back on. So it's a good thing that there's mirroring there. But I think that even apart from filling in holes in the app ecosystem, there's a role to be played for bringing these devices together more, so it's easier to move information from one to the other and work in kind of a collaborative way using whatever app you're most comfortable with. Because I know for me, like sometimes when I do my screenshots, I like using a Notable on my phone, even when I'm doing Mac screenshots to do like call outs and things like that. So I'll be on my Mac and I'll airdrop an image to my phone. It's iPhone mirrored. I'll do the little thing in a Notable. I'll airdrop it back to the Mac and I'll upload it to the CDN. I mean, it's really fast and seamless that way. And I'd love to be able to do more stuff like that on my Mac in the future.
Well, that's a review. You've done it again. Have you counted how many macOS reviews you've done?
Oh boy, actually I have not. Let's see.
You don't remember when you started?
Yeah, I guess I started in, trying to think, probably 2017, 18. Yeah, like I've probably done 7 of them.
7. Done plenty.
Yeah.
And would you say, let's see, I'm actually looking through the MacStories back catalog. You probably started with High Sierra in 2017.
Right.
Yeah.
Wow.
Wow. Would you say that Sequoia is your least favorite so far? Because if I recall correctly, you really liked Big Sur. And you really liked Ventura with Catalyst.
Yep.
And then
I've really liked some of the ones that have done more with the design.
Big Sur was one of them, I think.
Yeah, it really was. And that's, I guess, a whole nother category of things like, the notification center that needs to be fixed. There's things like that were implemented and they just kind of sit around. It's a problem, I think, on all the platforms that Apple does some sort of new design refresh and then doesn't revisit it or refine it very much in the future for at least a couple of years. And I think that problem is probably the worst on the Mac of all the platforms. But I wouldn't say it's my least favorite. No, I wouldn't. I would say maybe it might, going all the way back, maybe it was something like High Sierra. I'm not sure. It's as I said in the review, Sequoia is fine. But the problem with fine is that Apple has taught us to expect more than fine. And, so that's why it's a little unsatisfying. And there are things in it that I really like. There are a couple things I really, really don't like the distraction control thing. I don't think I think that's not very well thought out and not a good feature. But it's more the incompleteness of it, I think, that bothers me than the actual features that we got. There are a handful that I don't like, but most of it's okay.
Yeah. All right. Well, congratulations, John.
Thank you. You too.
You've done another one. Thank you.
Yeah, it's I think you and I deserve a little time off. We do a little play some video games, maybe.
We deserve a little Astrobot. That's what we do.
We do. It's been 2 weeks since I last played Astrobot. I really want to get back to it.
Ooh, I was playing it last night.
Were you?
Finally,
Oh,
yes.
Yeah, I actually thought of doing it last. Instead, I was playing with one of my new Anbernic handhelds.
Of course.
For NPC. So I've got a whole stack of Anbernics around here. We've gone 2 weeks and there's not been a new Anbernic device.
I know. I feel something feels off. I'm sure
something feels missing in the world.
They'll come out with a new one by tomorrow for sure.
Okay, probably you're right. All right, everybody. Well, thanks for joining us for Review Week on MacStories. Be sure to go to the site and check out all of the reviews and join Club MacStories if you want to read them in ebook form. That's plus.club. You can find me and Federico over at macstories.net. We are on Mastodon. Just go to vitici.macstories.net and johnvorhees.macstories.net to follow us there. And we're on Threads and Instagram. Federico is at Vitici. That's VITICCI. And I'm at John Voorhees. JOHNVOORHEES. Talk to you next week, Federico.
Ciao, John.